My name is Nina Carter. I'm 33, and for the last 5 years, I built the backbone of a brand my family now pretends I never touched. I helped raise a woman who now calls herself a CEO. I poured time, money, and every ounce of belief into a family that said, "We're proud of you," until I stopped being convenient. Last week, I said one word: no. And that's all it took for my mother to hurl a pot of soup at me in our kitchen. Because I refused to give my car to Kayla. Because I refused to disappear one more time. They thought I'd walk out quietly. They didn't know I'd walk into a law office 3 days later, with proof, a flash drive, and my father's ledger. What they didn't realize was I may have been written out of their story, but I never stopped writing my own. If you've ever been erased, overlooked, or told you were too emotional for standing up for what's yours, this story is for you. Drop your city in the comments if you've ever had to fight for your name. Hit like and subscribe. Because sometimes justice isn't loud, it's prepared. And when it knocks, it brings receipts. The steam from the pot curled between us like smoke from a house already burning. I could still smell the thyme, my favorite herb, the one I used every time I cooked here. And something about it made the sting sharper. It was like this kitchen, this room where I'd sliced fruit for Kayla when she was too nervous to eat before interviews, had turned against me too. Margaret stood across from me, her chest heaving. "You think this is funny? You think you're better than her?" "No," I said calmly, pressing my napkin to the side of my sweater. "I just don't think she needs my car to become a CEO overnight." Kayla sat at the island, one hand curled around a stemmed glass. She didn't even flinch, didn't blink, just swirled her Chardonnay and tilted it toward her lips like this was dinner theater, and I was the show. I had driven that woman to so many appointments, lent her my debit card when she said rent was late, even helped rewrite her resume so it didn't read like a horoscope. And now I was the villain for saying no. Margaret's hands were shaking, whether from anger or age, I couldn't tell anymore. "You've always been selfish. Always. You hated having to share the spotlight when your father and I married." "That was 15 years ago," I said, already stepping toward the hallway. "And I didn't hate the spotlight. I hated having to pretend I wasn't being replaced." That was when it happened. The scream, the lunge, the heavy-bottomed pot sailing off the stove, broth sloshing in slow motion as it arced through the air and splattered against the pantry door just inches from my head. The thunk of metal, the slap of liquid, the hiss of heat meeting paint. I didn't move. Just stood there, soup cooling on the walls behind me. Margaret's eyes widened as if realizing the line she'd crossed, but she didn't apologize. "Then don't come back," she said, voice breaking with the kind of rage that masquerades as grief. "This is Kayla's house now." I nodded once. Noted. There were no more words after that. I walked past the hallway mirror, past the family portraits where I'd been slowly edged out over the years. Kayla's graduation, Kayla's beach trip, Kayla's birthday in Maui. All funded by the same woman who now sat silently as I was erased in real time. My bedroom upstairs still smelled like lavender and old ambition. I zipped a duffel halfway shut. Laptop, hoodie, passport, backup charger. No photos, no journals. I'd already learned the hard way not to carry memories that could be weaponized later. Downstairs, the silence was full. Not awkward. Intentional. Kayla didn't rise. Margaret didn't follow. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just left. And started erasing myself from everything before they could. 3 days later, I saw the website. Kayla's name plastered everywhere. Mine? Nowhere. It was as if I had never existed. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in the room, washing everything in a dull blue that made even betrayal feel sterile. I hadn't slept much in the past 72 hours, and my fingers were trembling, not from fatigue, but from restraint. It took everything not to shove the laptop off the folding table. Kayla and Company. The name blinked in a soft serif font over a muted beige background, curated for some faux feminist aesthetic. Underneath, a bio. Kayla Carter, founder and visionary behind the community blend movement. I almost laughed. I scrolled further. The logo, an elegant swirl overlaid with coffee beans, was mine. I doodled it 3 years ago, 1 week after Dad died. I had scanned it on his old printer. It was my handwriting. I could trace the slight skip in the C where the pen had hiccuped. They had traced over my grief. I opened my old notebook, the one with sticky notes still clinging to margins, and began matching them against the site. Launch events, supplier partnerships, the Pay It Forward board. All ideas from our midnight brainstorms when Margaret still pretended to be impressed with me. I didn't cry. Not anymore. A buzz. I glanced at my phone. A message from Jenna Marsh. Just saw your LinkedIn update. Consultant? You okay? Jenna. The barista who never missed inventory, who wore vintage brooches and carried more wisdom in her eyebrows than Kayla could dream of. She'd been let go 2 months ago. Attitude issues, Margaret said. I had never believed it. I typed, "Do you have 15 minutes?" She replied before I could set the phone down. I'm parked outside. The cold slapped me when I opened the door. Jenna stepped into the studio with a coat too big and eyes too sharp. She didn't look around, didn't comment on the air mattress or the taped-up window. She just held up a small flash drive between 2 fingers like it might burn. I kept it because I didn't trust your mother, she said. Now I trust you more. I stared at the USB, its plastic casing scratched and ordinary. But I could feel it. The weight of something long denied. She sat at the folding chair while I loaded the drive. Dozens of files, PDFs, images, spreadsheets, and one folder labeled NC, Original Drafts, Not Submitted. I opened it. Receipts? Proposals. Ledger files with my initials. Some marked up in red. Edits Margaret had claimed never existed. Tax forms with wrong dates. A signature that looked close to mine, but curved where mine would hook. I scrolled, breath shallow. The pieces were here. I had built something. I wasn't crazy. Jenna watched me. She wanted it clean. No trace of you except the labor. I nodded slowly, eyes locked on the screen. They erased me, but now I know where to start. Dad's handwriting wasn't beautiful, but on that ledger, every imperfect letter felt like justice rising from the grave. The walls of Thatcher Law smelled like old books and older battles. The office hadn't changed much since I was a teenager, tagging along with Dad when he'd stop by just to check in with Eli. Now, it felt like walking into a memory, solid, heavy, and too quiet. Elijah Thatcher didn't greet me with a smile. He simply gestured to the leather chair across from his, like a courtroom was already in session. He looked older, the salt overtaking the pepper in his hair, but his eyes hadn't dulled. If anything, they looked sharper now, as if he saw through layers people didn't know they wore. I set the ledger on his desk and opened it to the bookmarked page. The numbers scrawled in my father's angular script wavered slightly in the dim lamplight. This never made it to the IRS, I said quietly. He adjusted his glasses, leaned forward. His fingers moved deliberately, tracing the ink, the columns, the annotations. Then he sat back and nodded once. No, it didn't, he said. And whoever did file, forged it. My breath caught, even though I already knew. Hearing it aloud from him made it real. I wasn't being paranoid. I wasn't being bitter. I was right. He closed the ledger gently, like it was something sacred. This is your father's hand. No question. Sloppy as ever, but honest. He hated spreadsheets, but trusted ledgers. I smiled faintly. He used to say, "Money doesn't lie, people do." Thatcher raised a brow. And people are lying now. He stood and walked to a file cabinet in the back, unlocking the top drawer. From a narrow folder, he pulled a yellowed envelope. My name was on the front, in Dad's chicken scratch all caps. I've kept this, he said, returning. He gave it to me 4 days before the stroke, said I'd know when to hand it over. I hesitated before opening it. Inside, a single sheet, folded in thirds. No greeting, no sign-off. Just his words. In case they rewrite history, this is yours. You know what you did. Don't let them take it. Beneath the note was a faded copy of our original partnership agreement, unsigned but annotated, including my equity breakdown. Dated, time-stamped. I thought this was symbolic, Thatcher murmured. Now I see it was protection. I looked up at him. How do we make them remember? He didn't blink. We don't. We prove. Silence settled between us. For once, it wasn't awkward. It was weight, mutual understanding, shared purpose. I slid the ledger back toward him. Will you help me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied me, the way someone evaluates a piece of evidence. Not with doubt, with care. He folded his hands. Not because of him, he said finally, but because you came here prepared, not bitter, focused. The part of me that still wanted to cry or scream or just collapse faded into the background. All that remained was a steady hum of resolve. He pulled a thin folder from his drawer and slid it across the table. You're going to need to request discovery, he said, and find one more thing, motive. I placed my hand on the folder, fingers steady. The same hand that once held espresso tampers and credit card receipts was now preparing to expose a cover-up. And I wasn't afraid. The subject line reads, let's make Kayla look fundable. It wasn't even subtle. I reread it, fingers cold around the ceramic mug, steam curling upward like it could erase the nausea rising in my chest. The coffee shop near University Circle buzzed with the easy noise of mid-afternoon students and soft indie music. But my booth felt like a bunker. Elise Tran sat across from me, biting her thumbnail, her laptop open just enough for me to see the inbox. Her eyes never quite met mine. I didn't forward it, she said. Just took screenshots. If it's traceable, I lose everything. You won't, I replied. She flinched slightly, then exhaled. You're braver than I am. I didn't say I wasn't. I wasn't brave. I was just too tired to be quiet anymore. The thread scrolled with each swipe. Subject lines like, grant narrative final.x. Insert Nina's numbers here. And the one that made Elise look sick. Reminder, clear metadata before upload. Kayla hadn't just lied. She had engineered a persona, polished with someone else's words, someone else's data, and presented it as hers to win a state grant. And Margaret, if she knew it all, had decided to look the other way. Here, Elise said, sliding a flash drive across the table. This is the draft I was told to clean. It's got your metrics, your outreach plan. You'll see. I changed the font just so it wouldn't be identical. I inserted it into my laptop. The document opened in seconds, and my stomach sank. Every line was familiar. Outreach targets I developed with Jenna, survey results from a pitch I led, a client quote that had been on our old website before it was scrubbed. You built it, Elise said quietly. And she cut out your name, like you were a placeholder. Why did you keep all this? She hesitated. Because I thought maybe she'd turn on me too. And because I saw how your mom looked at her, like Kayla was the second coming. She tapped her phone screen and played a voice memo. The audio crackled. Then came Kayla's voice, unmistakable and smug. Margaret's easy. Just toss in a few words like vision and tenacity, and she's basically weeping with pride. She'll believe whatever I tell her. That's why she's useful. Elise hit pause, eyes flicking toward the door. I was there when she said that. I was supposed to delete it, but I didn't. We sat in silence, the memo still open on her phone like a wound. She'll know it was you, I said. Not a threat. A warning. She suspects me already, Elise said. But she won't be able to prove it unless I testify. Which I won't. Not publicly. You won't have to, I said. But you will be essential. She looked up, finally holding my gaze. "You're not the first she's pushed out," she said, voice low. "You're just the first that's going to push back." She closed her laptop and stood, brushing invisible crumbs from her coat. "Don't let her bury you." "I won't," I said. "Not this time." As she walked away, I sat back, thumb tracing the edge of the flash drive. It was enough to question the grant's legitimacy. Enough to raise red flags in the right inboxes. Enough to burn Kayla's clean girl empire to ash, if I used it right. My phone buzzed on the table. A notification blinked. Calendar update. HOA Annual Review. April 18th, 2024. Location. Carter Residence. I stared at the screen. So they'd be opening the house. To the neighborhood. To the board. To witnesses. Perfect. I stepped back into that house not as a daughter, but as a witness. The Carter residence looked like it had been staged for a home magazine shoot. Rose-tinted lemonade glistened in glass dispensers, mini pastries arranged like exhibits on porcelain trays. The afternoon sun lit the patio with a false warmth, but underneath it all, something soured. This wasn't a homecoming. It was a reckoning. Margaret stood near the French doors, laughing a little too loud with Mrs. Harden from 2 doors down. Her dress was pale green, linen, breezy, effortless. Kayla floated past the crowd, hugging and kissing cheeks like a campaigner. The young face of progress, as she'd once called herself. She hadn't seen me yet. I arrived 10 minutes after the meeting officially began. On purpose. Elijah Thatcher walked a step behind me, calm as ever in his charcoal suit. He carried a leather folder under one arm and met Margaret's eyes with a slight nod that said everything and nothing. "Oh, Nina," Margaret said, lips parting into something brittle. "Didn't know you'd—" "I'm on the HOA contact list," I said simply. "Still own a quarter lot here, remember?" Her smile faltered. Elijah and I took seats near the back, but close enough to be heard. Kayla stepped forward, her voice bright. "Thank you all for joining us today. It's been an honor overseeing the last year of neighborhood initiatives. As we gear up for the next fiscal period..." I tuned out the rest. I had read her script 2 nights ago. Elise had leaked the draft. Every number pulled from my old outreach plan. Every phrase designed to coat incompetence in charm. When the applause died down, Elijah stood. "If I may," he said. "My client has prepared a brief presentation for the board. This pertains directly to neighborhood resource allocations and historical business filings relevant to Carter Holdings LLC murmurs." Mrs. Langston raised a brow. Mr. Diaz shifted in his seat. I stood without hurry, pulled a printed packet from my bag and began walking it to each board member, one by one. Stapled, labeled, dated. "This," I said, "is the real timeline. It includes original ledger entries from 2021, IRS filings from 2023, metadata from grant applications filed under false pretenses, and annotated communications involving Ms. Kayla Carter and Margaret Carter." Kayla's voice cracked. "This is petty. You're dragging family into... This isn't about family." Elijah interjected. "It's about accountability. This board represents fiduciary responsibility. We suggest you listen before reacting." I opened my copy and read aloud, steady. "In case they rewrite history, this is yours. You know what you did. Don't let them take it." I held up the faded note. "My father wrote this the week he died. And they did try. But now there's record." Eyes flicked between pages. Someone gasped at the voice memo transcript. Elise's testimony was there, redacted for anonymity. Jenna's ledger backups, dates, signatures, even the email subject line, "Let's make Kayla look fundable," was bolded on the cover sheet. The patio had gone still. Margaret clutched her glass. Her lips were pale. I didn't know. I didn't look at her. I looked at the board, at the neighbors who had smiled politely at her open houses, who'd believed every baked brie was a sign of generosity. But you chose to never ask. The words dropped into the silence like stone into still water. Somewhere near the door, someone whispered, "We'll need to revisit the vote on district grants." Another added, "This should have been disclosed months ago." Margaret opened her mouth, then closed it. Kayla folded her arms and stepped back, suddenly unsure of where to stand. I didn't press further. I didn't need to. The papers spoke for me. When they got home, the locks had been changed. The silence was legal. The SUV pulled into the driveway with its usual entitled hum, headlights cutting through the dusk like nothing had shifted. But something had. Everything had. From the window across the street, Mrs. Langston stood behind her curtain, coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. The Carter women were back, from wherever they had slithered off to in the name of image rehabilitation. A wellness retreat, the rumor went. PR coaching in disguise, a paid escape from consequence. Kayla stepped out first, sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara. Margaret followed, slower, heels clicking with performative grace. They approached the door together. Kayla tried her key. It didn't budge. She jiggled it. Tried again. Then yanked harder, her tone rising. It stuck. Margaret frowned, pulling hers out, but the key slid in and spun freely, never catching. And then they saw it. The paper. Pinned neatly to the wood grain with blue painter's tape. Typed in Elijah's clean serif font. No drama. Just the law. Notice of immediate possession. Carter Estate Property Number 112. Effective April 25, 2024. Ownership and management rights reverted to Nina Carter, per Articles 7B and 9CE of the Carter Family Trust, in light of filed fraud claims and successful injunctions. Further access is restricted until audit concludes. Kayla's voice tore through the neighborhood. Are you kidding me? She pounded on the door, eyes darting toward the camera above the porch. You think this scares me? You think this is over? Margaret said nothing. She was staring at the name on the notice. Just one name. Nina Carter. A tremor passed through her face, not quite disbelief. Recognition. She reached for her phone and dialed. Once. Twice. Left a voicemail. Her voice, once composed and performative, cracked under its own weight. Nina? Honey? I don't know what this is about, but we need to talk. Please, just call me back, okay? Please. But I never heard it. I was already 2 cities away, curled in a quiet co-working lounge, finalizing a grant application. Under my name, my credentials, my story, unedited. Elijah had called earlier, voice steady. It's done. They've been served. You won't need to be there unless you choose to. I didn't choose to. I printed the application and signed it in pen. No ghostwriters, no borrowed plans, no borrowed name. A ping on my phone. A voicemail. I swiped left and hit delete without listening. Then I shut the laptop, folded the final printout, and tucked it into a folder labeled simply, Reclaim. The Carter house wasn't mine anymore. Not in spirit, not in memory. I didn't want the ghosts, just the truth. They could have the silence. They left me with nothing. So I took everything back and left them exactly what they gave me. Nothing. I didn't go back to the house. Not really. I drove past it once, slowly, deliberately, a week after the locks had changed. The front yard looked the same. Over-trimmed hedges, fake seasonal wreath on the door, Margaret's idea of tasteful control. But the house felt different. Lighter, maybe, or just emptied of the weight it once pressed on my chest. They were gone. Temporarily. Legally displaced, pending audit and litigation. No cameras this time. No screaming from the porch. Just a silent monument to what they tried to claim and what I quietly took back. I didn't need to step inside again. Not to sit at the table where they called me selfish. Not to touch the kitchen floor still stained with soup and resentment. That version of me, the one who flinched, who tried too hard, who believed silence would eventually earn love. She no longer lived there. Elijah said it best. We don't need to make them remember. We prove. And we did, piece by piece, timestamp by timestamp. The ledger my father left behind became my spine. Elise's emails, Jenna's records, even the petty voicemails from Margaret. All of it. A chorus of facts no amount of denial could drown out. I didn't shout. I didn't smear. I simply showed up, prepared. At the HOA meeting, I wasn't the angry daughter. I was the woman holding their lies in ink and proof. I watched Margaret's smile crack, Kayla's poise unravel, and the neighbors shift uncomfortably in their seats as the truth rearranged the room. They had rewritten the past for years. They just never thought I'd write the ending. And when it ended, it was quiet. No applause, no dramatic exits. Just the hum of Elijah's voice reminding them, this isn't a spectacle. It's a correction. I didn't answer Margaret's calls. I didn't respond to Kayla's PR statement begging for grace and healing. That wasn't my job anymore. Healing isn't earned without truth. And grace? It's a gift, not a loophole. Instead, I went back to the beginning. To the version of myself that once sat alone in Akron, wondering what was left after family collapses. And the answer surprised me. Everything. Because once the noise cleared, I still had my name, my work, my will, my father's handwriting, my truth. I filed for my own grant. This time, no assistant, no forged pitch decks, no inflated resumes. Just me, and the legacy they tried to paint over. The approval came within 3 weeks. The irony? It was the same grant Kayla lied her way into. Except this time, the state called to thank me, not question me. Funny how that works when you tell the truth the first time. I didn't reclaim the house to live in it. I reclaimed it because they thought I wouldn't, because they gambled that the quiet one wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. I've since donated the space. The living room now hosts literacy sessions for underfunded women entrepreneurs. The kitchen? Community meals on Saturdays. No soup gets thrown, and no one gets erased. I didn't need to destroy them. I just needed to stop carrying them. Some people mistake absence for weakness, but sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away and make sure the door behind you locks for good. They left me with nothing, so I took everything back, piece by piece, and left them exactly what they gave me. Nothing. Justice didn't arrive with fireworks. It came in signatures, silence, and truth that could no longer be buried. When betrayal meets resilience, even the loudest lies fall quiet. Because no wall of deceit can stand forever against the tide of proof. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If you're still here, chances are, you understand. Sometimes silence isn't peace, it's erasure. And sometimes the journey toward justice doesn't begin with a scream, but with evidence. Nina Carter didn't take everything back out of revenge. She took it back with truth. With the handwritten ledger her father left behind. With voice memos, paper trails, and the emails they thought no one would ever find. If you've ever been pushed out of something you helped build, if you've ever been told you were too sensitive, too much, or hard to work with, just because you wouldn't disappear, this video is for you, because justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives in a folder named Reclaim, in a legal notice, in a sentence that says, I didn't need to destroy them. I just needed to stop carrying them. Thank you for walking with this channel through stories like Nina's. Every view, every comment, every share is a reminder that people are waking up. Truth is being rewritten. If you want more stories like this, quietly powerful, emotionally sharp, and unshakably true, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a moment. And if you've ever stood on the sidelines, waiting for permission, remember this: you don't need to be invited. You can write your own name onto the list. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next video, where silence is no longer the ending, but the start of a new chapter. Some people only contact you when they need an audience, not connection. Not reconciliation, just applause. So when I saw the subject line, "Hope you can make it," Sienna and Caleb's engagement party, I didn't feel invited. I felt summoned. It wasn't curiosity that made me click. It was closure. Because what they didn't know, what they never cared to ask, was that the girl they'd written off in every family story now signed six-figure contracts in silence. They used to ask if I was still unemployed. Now their son-in-law's startup is trying to court my company. Blake Core Systems. No press. No photos. Just performance. Quiet. Relentless. I said yes to the party. Not because I wanted to belong again,